If a big hurricane were to hit the Cape and Islands, would the region be prepared to deal with it? It's been 27 years since the last one, Hurricane Bob, hammered the area in 1991. The entire Cape lost power when that Category 2 hurricane ripped through. Hundreds of thousands of downed trees blocked streets and fell on houses and power lines. Hundreds of boats were thrown up on the shore. Many experts say it's not a matter of if another storm like Hurricane Bob will hit the Cape, but when. Jeff Donnelly, a senior scientist at the Woods Hole Oceanographic Institution, studies how climates of the past have changed and how that might influence what we experience in the centuries to come.
Probably the most intense hurricane strike since Europeans settled New England was in 1635. And we happen to know as much as we do about it because it passed right between the two European settlements here at the time, Plymouth and Boston. It was probably a really strong Category 3 hurricane that was moving very rapidly. It caused an immense amount of damage, demolished entire forests, caused over 20 feet of storm surge in some locations. And we really haven't seen a hurricane of its magnitude since. There's been others that have passed further to the west, like the 1938 hurricane, Hurricane Carol, but in terms of Cape Cod and southeastern New England, the 1635 was probably the most intense. And one of the things that this research allows us to do is provide that long-term context and get a better sense for what our true risk to these events really are. They're so rare, they only occur a few times in someone's lifetime typically, and so it's really hard to gauge sort of how at risk we really are. But if we can take a much longer term perspective, we can really say something more quantitative about our risk and how frequently we should really see these sorts of events. For these really intense hurricanes though, you can have really extensive wind damage very far inland, right? So you're not only sort of causing storm surge and erosion at the coast, but you're knocking homes down and blowing roofs off of homes many, many miles inland. And so in that sense, when we're thinking about the most intense storms, it's really the entire population that needs to be worried about that. Buzzards Bay is one of the most vulnerable areas on the entire east coast of the U.S., and it's because of its orientation of the south-facing funnel-shaped embayment, right? So any hurricane that makes landfall to the west of Buzzards Bay is going to focus storm surge into the bay and cause this sort of accentuated rise in water level. So where we're getting only 10 or 12 feet of storm surge on the open coast, you get nearly double that up in Buzzards Bay because of this focusing.
While winds are dangerous, it is the storm surge and water damage from rains that cause the most destruction during hurricanes. Flooding from windy winter storms in early 2018 damaged many Cape Cod homes, including those in neighborhoods around Barnstable Harbor. Homeowners like Matthew Tague, who is also a local builder, have had to make costly adjustments to prepare for the next big one.
We were flooded out twice this year, once in January and once in March. And we made the decision to go ahead and build in place and build a flood compliant structure. So what was here previous was about a 500 square foot cottage. That cottage was basically at street level, about elevation 8, and the new flood zone is now at elevation 12, so we have to build our new foundation to about a foot above that. And on the sides of the foundation there are some vents that will tip open in a flood event. So basically the water level would rise, the water can come through the foundation, pass out the other side, and really essentially cause no damage. I think this last year was a real eye-opener for a lot of people in terms of what the potential damages are from a real flood in this area. A lot of the neighbors here, were not in flood zones prior to 2014 and now are. And yeah, I think after this year's events, they are really concerned about a major flood event. I mean, most of these neighbors in here, they had definitely lost their heating systems. There was a lot of damage to the interior structures, mold, mildew. Those are the sorts of things that are really expensive to fix. And now you're going to be required to make those systems compliant with flood requirements. So your furnace, even though it was in the basement, may have to be up in the living area or elevated on a slab. That alone doesn't preclude you from the potential damage another flood event could cause.
I think in general, we're not very well prepared. They happen infrequently enough that they sort of fall from our memory. One of the biggest challenges is that when a big storm or a strong hurricane hits New England, it's usually because it's moving very rapidly. But that means we have very little time to react, right? We basically will have a storm off of Hatteras that could be here in 8 or 10 hours, right? So, rather than having days to prepare for evacuations and things like that, we might only have, a half a day, something like that. So that poses a lot of challenges that I don't think we're ready for. We want to have plans in place so that we can react and, like I said, get people out of harm's way.